Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Scout 6316, 8.8 for 6,000.
Yeah, 6316, North Approach, going to maintain 3,000, number 1 for the right.
3,000, Scout 6316.
Redwood 811, going to maintain 4,000. Airport's open to Fox 1.
We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over again. We take you higher and higher and higher. You feel it over and over.
6 Roman careful, runway heading, runway 5. Let's take off.
Check.
And we are ready for takeoff. Sit back, relax. It's time to travel with Cosmic Passport. Spaced Out Weekend presents Elizabeth Anglin's Cosmic Passport. A 1-hour warm-up of news, stories, thoughts, and ideas to captivate your mind. You can follow us at spacedoutradio.com.
Now 20 years have passed us by, and we look back and count the time. Burning like the summer sun, when the world was young. As I lay staring from the ground, and sniffing trumpets wait to sound.
And now, here's Our Lady of Flight, Cosmic Passport with Elizabeth Anglin.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth Anglin. Okay, I'm not. Elizabeth is feeling a tad under the weather, and she wanted me to do the introduction. Why, you ask? Well, I'll tell you, he said. I don't know why. She does this. She has a great interview tonight with author Mike Clelland. He's collected a wealth of first-hand accounts in which owls manifest in highly charged moments that surround alien contact. In his new book, The Messengers, Owls, Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee. There is a strangest to these accounts that defy simple explanation. His book explores implications that go far beyond what more conservative researchers would dare to consider. But the owl connection encompasses more than the UFO experience. It also includes profound synchronicities, ancient archetypes, dreams, shamanistic experiences, personal transformation, and death. From the mythic legend of our ancient past to the first-hand accounts of the UFO abductee, owls are playing some vital role. Now, Mike and host Elizabeth will talk about both their own personal experiences with owls, both shared in his book, as well as what Mike learned about the experiences of others and the history, mystery, and mythology of the owl encounters across human history. Now, you can find out more about Mike's work and go to his book on his website. And where was his website? I was supposed to mention. Well, actually, Google Hidden Experience, or Mark Cleland at Cleland. And he is a very, very interesting fellow and has been a friend of Elizabeth's for quite a while. Again, his book is Owls, Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee, and it's kind of exciting. This is a cool interview, And Elizabeth definitely wanted you to take part in hearing this. It's part 1 of 2. The second part will be tomorrow night. And you can find us here tomorrow night, same time, same bat channel. And remember, you are listening to Spaced Out Weekend and part of the Spaced Out Radio Network, broadcasting 7 days a week here from my little log cabin, it's actually sticking out on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network. And I got to tell you that we're anticipating a big blizzard up at the Spaced Out Radio Network here over Christmas and New Year's. So you will not be hearing us on the air. We're boarding up the cabin, going down the fire pole to the first floor, and try to get warm. So again, there'll be no broadcast on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. How did that work? I really don't know. But here she is, young Elizabeth and Mike Clelland.
So without further ado, I am happy to invite and talk to Mike Clelland, and we're going to get him on here right now. How are you, Mike?
Very good. How are you?
Good. I'm hoping my dog won't bark at everything, but
we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. Come here, Wyatt. So you and I have something in common, which is sometimes it sounds like a bird, but it's not. We're both Michiganders.
Oh, yes, we are both from Michigan, correct, yeah.
Yeah, and when I first met you, that was the thing that was most compelling to me, is because we are both from southern lower Michigan, and we're both of a similar age. We're in the similar age range. And so I love the fact, because I had a lot of owl experiences in Michigan, that a fellow Michigander became interested in really looking at the subject of owls. So you give me great state pride.
Well, I haven't been back to Michigan in a long time, and I don't think I ever even noticed an owl growing up in Michigan. I lived in in the suburbs of Detroit, so I was just a few miles from the Detroit border. So, it wasn't really owl habitat. I'm certain there were owls around, but I never noticed them. I was probably near 30 years old before I ever consciously remember seeing an owl for the first time.
So owls were something that, you were 30 years old. What was happening when you started remembering or started seeing owls? What happened? Did that change things, or was it later that things changed?
Well, I had a set of memories, odd memories, all throughout my life. I was 12 years old in 1974 and was with a friend walking home from a high school football game in Michigan, in the suburbs of Detroit, in Southfield, Michigan, and saw an odd flash in the sky. And then when I arrived home, my parents were angry at me, and I was like, "What are you angry at me for? I didn't do anything wrong." And they're like, "Well, you're out too late." And I wasn't. I knew what time I wanted to be home, because I wanted to be home in time to see a television show. But I was about between an hour and a half or 2 hours of missing time there that I couldn't account for. And that's in association with seeing a bright orange flash that seemed to light up the entire sky. It was very unusual, very quiet. So I had a handful of experiences like that growing up, and I managed to just push them aside, deny them, not deal with them. And then it wasn't until I was literally 44 years old, and that's when I started seeing owls, en masse.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any experiences at that time? Like, were they pointing to them, or you just started seeing them?
The experiences as far as seeing the owls, well, the first experience I had was seeing the owls that was, I sort of consider, the one event that pushed me down this path, the one event that I couldn't shake, and that kind of freaked me out a little bit, where I was camping, and this would have been in the autumn or late summer autumn of 2006, so going back on 9 years ago now. And I was living at the time in quite near Grand Teton National Park. So I went camping with someone. It was actually a complete stranger. Just asked this person, got to talking, and I said I go camping a lot, which I do, or did. And we ended up spending one night out in the mountains. And on that night, her name was Kristen. We were sitting out, just hiked into the mountains. We didn't take a tent, didn't take a shelter, beautiful weather, so we just were planning just to sleep under the stars. And as the sun was setting, I was cooking on a little camp stove, and she was sitting right next to me. As the sun was setting, an owl flew over us, and a second owl, and then a third owl. And for the next several, I guess a few hours really, well until the sun went down, these owls flew around us, flew above us, landed near us, landed on branches near us, watched us as we ate dinner. It was really a powerful experience. And the first owl appeared. We were talking, and she was saying something. And I remember being kind of, struck by what she was saying. It came across as very profound, and I realized I was with someone who had a depth that I didn't expect. It surprised me. Now, some years later, I asked her. I didn't remember at the time. I got a hold of her and I called her up. We hadn't seen each other for a while, and she had moved out of the town. And I said, what were we talking about, or what were you talking about? I asked her, what were you talking about the very first night we saw those owls? And she said, I remember exactly what I was talking about. I was talking about my most heartfelt definition of what God meant to be. Of what God meant to me. And that took, an already interesting experience and really pushed it into the strangeness. Now, what I also have to add is, we went out camping for one night. We saw these three owls. It was pretty cool. When we got back to town, I said, hey, listen, I go out camping all the time. If I go out again, I'll give you a call. How's that sound? And she says, great. So it was 4 days later, I called her up and I said, I'm going out camping, just same thing, one night. And she said, great. She came with me. And as the sun was setting, it was colder that night. It was really chilly. That was kind of breezy and chilly. So as the sun was setting, I said, let's just walk up to that hilltop up there. And from up there, we can get a nice pretty view of the sunset. And then just the act of walking up the hill and walking back down when we climb into the shelter will be, we won't be as chilly, because it was kind of, felt like we were going to be cold. So we walked up to the top of this hill. We get to the top of the hill, and as we watch the sunset, an owl lands on a tree branch. Then another owl lands right next to us on the ground, and then this other owl landed right there too. So there were, again, three owls. This was 4 days apart with the same person. This set of events,
I have to ask before you go further. Do you remember what her most heartfelt definition of God was?
That's a good question. In fact, I just got back to her, and I'd have to look it up on it. It was more that God is a sort of, I'm paraphrasing poorly, I think now, is not something outside us, but is something within us, and it is not something up there. It is a manifestation of everything. So that would have been, the short answer.
A sort of oneness within us all, that we are somehow internally godly and connected, perhaps.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. And you had an owl land on the ground. That's amazing. I have never seen that.
These were what I think were short-eared owls. A lot of, owls obviously land on the ground sometimes. The bigger the owl, the less likely you are to see it land on the ground. The big great grays and the big horned owls, or great horned owls, will very rarely land on the ground unless they're catching prey. Yeah. You'll almost only see them in flight or in a tree. So I'm pretty sure these were short-eared owls. pretty common owl, and an owl it's not unusual to see short-eared owls in a cluster. Like I see a few of them, but
right.
to see them, hanging out with us for 2 hours which happened the first night, and then it was probably more like a half hour the second night, because by the time they flew off, it was getting dark. So they in a way they gave us permission to walk back down to our tent by flying off.
So they stayed. They landed and they stayed, and did you keep talking? And
we were pretty reverent. We were pretty quiet the second night, and then the first night it just went on for so long. Yeah, we were talking and so the first night we were definitely chatting and talking and such.
Interesting.
Okay, and the owls were landing pretty close. They got much closer the second night, which would have been 4 nights later, but the second camping trip.
Right.
And this is now what I just told you is what it amounts to, just kind of a very simple story, right? It's like there's not much to it, People go out camping, they see some owls, so that's the story. And it shouldn't have had such a profound impact on me, but it did. It had a really profound, I don't want to say, it set me on a new life path. I guess that's as fair to say as anything. After that, I started seeing owls everywhere, real owls. There's a screen memory aspect to the UFO contact experience, which I was very well aware of at that point. These, I feel strongly saying, were real owls. They looked like owls. They were owl-sized. They were probably all of, they would stand in the ground. They wouldn't be much above 12 inches tall, standing on the ground. So that's actually a fairly big owl, but these were not what would fall into the screen memory category. And I was very aware of that. And this is also something that happened both nights. When I was with Kristen, I had the unshakable thought in my mind, very clear, very forceful, and that thought was, this has something to do with the UFOs. Seeing these owls.
What gave you that thought? Do you know, or was it just something that you unshakably knew, or was there something else that you connected?
Well, no, I don't. Obviously the owl lore from the UFO abduction books that I had been reading, they show up as screen memories. Mm-hmm. But what was going on in my life, more or less, at that point was at a point when I realized I needed to look into my own experiences. I had been denying them, and I needed to take that next step and look into them, and I hadn't been doing that. Mm-hmm. I just continued to deny, and then the owls sort of put a halt to that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think I wish somebody would call in and tell us their story, because I have the same situation. I shared it with you about the owl in Maine coming through the wall, and the owl after the first support group flying over the car. It's a huge, great snowy, flying over the car.
So wait, the owl in Maine coming through the wall. We talked about that some years ago. Now I'm going to do the thing that I need to do here, which I just finished a book, so I'm going to play self-promoter here. But I just finished a book. And,
yes, he has a great book. This is what we were talking. Everybody.
Yes, it's about owls.
Yes, go ahead.
Owls, yeah. So the book is titled The Messengers. The subtitle is Owls, Synchronicity, and the UFO Abductee. It's published by Richard Dolan Press. He wrote the foreword to it. He actually played editor on it. Several of your stories are in there. You show up in this book. It's actually a great big book. It's nearly 400 pages, and I share your account of one of which was growing up in Michigan, and the other one was the event in after the first support group at John Mack's house.
Mm-hmm. Driving away in a car. It was a chilly night, but it wasn't terribly cold, and I was getting a ride to the train station with two other experiencers, and a huge, great snowy flew over the top of the car and just flew in front of the car as we drove away from John Mack's house. Oh, so it had to be a good 30 seconds, if not longer. and then just peeled off. Yeah, I mean, it basically was over the hood of the car, so we could see the length of the wingspan, it was a big owl. I mean, the wings were the size of the width of the car easily, and it just flew in front of us, came over the top, flew over the hood, flew about 10 feet in front of us, and then so we kind of all sat there as the driver was driving, mouth open, not breathing, and then it peeled off into a little woods that was on the way, and that was it. But it was like, well, okay, if you need confirmation or not, there it is. When do you see a great snowy? They're not that common in Massachusetts. And when do they fly over your car in such a way for such a length of time? So it was amazing.
And that story seems to have, so here we have, and this is what I've done in the book, is I take these experiences and I kind of, mull them over and kind of speculate on any deeper meaning, right? Because on one level, there's no meaning at all. It's just a bird that flew in front of a car. But on a deeper level, this is, like if you called, someone from MUFON and they, called a UFO investigator to come and talk to them about, their eyes would glaze over. This doesn't have anything to do with what they're interested in, But if you called the shaman and had them come and sit with you and listen to the story, you might get a completely different, a way of looking at this. So I've been, in a way, trying to look at this with my shaman hat on, which I don't really have a shaman hat. I just kind of sense that there's a deeper, more profound meaning to the very first support group at John Mack's house, someone who's very influential in the study and as well as the support of I mean, he's a clinician first and a researcher second, was my sense. His goal was to be helpful to people in who've experienced what amounts to trauma, and he that there would be a white owl escorting the people home after this very first meeting is, to me, very, very filled with deeper meaning.
And what's interesting, and I know this. My dad is a biologist. My brother's a wildlife biologist, and I was an Audubon bird counter for years, and little junior wildlife biologist since I was 3 years old. And, you'll see birds. Sometimes ravens will parallel your car if you're in the right area and they know you and they like you. But most of the time, birds are crossing. They're going across your path. They're not flying over you and with you, matching your speed, and, staying with you for some length of time. Maybe ravens. I've had ravens up where I live in Colorado do that, but they know me. And they're waiting for me to scare up critters so they can get a meal or hit something. But they also know me. But that's rare. I mean, so the thing that I would say about this thing was, you'll see an owl in a tree. You'll see an owl across the road. You'll see it going about its business, but you rarely see it coming over the top of you so perfectly. I mean, this you'll hear about these stories very rarely unless you're doing research like this for a book like this, where at this point, your story, though I don't have one that exactly parallels that story, I certainly have other ones that have the same flavor of that. An owl showing up at just that type of highly charged moment. Yeah, it's like, this is, it was an incredibly highly charged moment, and there's this unusual thing which would be an event in and of itself on top of this big event. I'm glad you put it in there. That's great. But I also had a screen memory. Did you put that in there?
No, I did not. I had no lack. What I had to do, quite honestly, is I had to sort of, in the progression of the book, I had to introduce screen memories. Oftentimes they show up as owls, and then I just had to, explain it as cleanly as I could, and then move on, because the screen memory is one thing. The real owls, to me, are much more fascinating. And I guess anyone who's showing up at this kind of podcast would know what the term screen memory is. I don't know if we need to define that, do we? Or
No, I think most of the people, most of the people will know what a screen memory is.
Great. Okay. Good. I tell some wonderful screen memory stories, and then I move on. I mean, that's the problem, is that, and then there's some that are very blurry. It's very difficult to tell which is a screen memory and which isn't. But what you're describing, and just tell the story again, because it's been over 2 years since we spoke about that event.
So the first meeting at John Mack's house, it was in the fall. It was a little cold, Wyatt-ish, and I was in. There were literally, we had 1, 2, myself, 3, 4, 5 experiencers. One was the husband of a primary experiencer who was getting regressions. 2 were good friends that had been in a group experience at a lake with a group of people, but they also, once they had the lake experience, remembered that they had lifetime experiences. And another guy who was there didn't belong. He was in the group, but he wasn't a lifelong experiencer, the group at the lake that had this whole big group camping experience. And anyway, so literally had 4 hardcore experiencers, a husband and a friend, at the first meeting. It wasn't very big. Wyatt, come here. And we were leaving. As we were leaving, one of the experiencers who later became one of my very, very best friends and passed away and is now one of my good helpers in spirit, he's a big, scary-looking guy. He had huge shoulders. He had a facial tic. He was so smart he couldn't keep up with his own thoughts. So when he would try to express himself, he'd get stuck because he'd be about 10 thoughts ahead of what he was just trying to say. And I said to the Julia, who is out, and her husband, as we were leaving, I don't want to be a member of any club that guy is in. It was just flatly. I don't want to be a member. I don't want to go to support group because that guy's a weirdo and he scares the crap out of me. And then we get in the car and they're driving me to the train. And we're not really talking about too much. We're kind of talking a little bit and kind of thoughtful. And it's only a 10-minute ride to the train. And all of a sudden, there appears over the top of the car this great snowy owl, this big white owl. Wingtip to wingtip is as large as the width of the car, and it goes over the hood. And as we see it go over the hood, we all just, go, oh. It's like, oh. And then, we're all thinking it's going to peel off or it's going to cross the road, and it doesn't. It stays just ahead of the car and flies down the road right in front of us with its wings out. So it's catching some kind of heat or something, or it got up enough flappage before that in the next time it flaps, it peels off. But we just went, oh. And for me, I think what happened, I don't know if I told you this, I think it made me decide to go back even though I was afraid of the big guy.
You never said that so clearly, but okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you implied it.
Yeah. I implied it, but I think it made me decide to go back, and I think it gave Julia ammunition to tell me that I needed to go back. And, because she would say sometimes when I was thinking about running away, remember that owl? And I'd be like, yeah. And I go like, okay, yeah, it's going to be all right. You never see that. That's important. You never see that. Okay, all right, I better stick with this. So. But yeah, that's what it was, really big and really white.
And what was your screen memory event that took place in Maine?
Oh, you're interviewing me now. Well, it was in March.
That's what I do. Yeah, we're interviewing a lot of people for this book. Yeah, so.
You're good at this. Wyatt, it was in March or early April of the same year, and it was right before I went into regression with Dr. Mack. And a friend of mine from work had brought up that he thought I was an abductee, and I had what happened is the alien showed up right after he said he thought I was an abductee, and I had a conscious memory. And then I kept getting downloads. Like I would see an alien in my mind's eye, and he would start giving me information. And one of the things, the information he gave me was, well, we have bases. Here are some of our bases near you. You could probably pretty easily get up to the one in Maine, near Jackman Lake, over, and then he would say, and here are some of our flying routes. And I got out a map, and I was in school for, map making, and I drew lines and put down the bases and put down the routes and then, put little notes about who was where that he was giving me, and I just started writing down these downloads. And I didn't know what mediumship was at that point. I didn't know what anything was, but he was telling me stuff, and the only way for me to catch it was to write it down and to put it on the map. So I was kind of like the guy from, what was it, Close Encounters?
Close Encounters,
when he got out the map. Yeah.
Well, like me when I got out the maps. Yeah, the culmination of the book is me getting out these maps. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't go fast enough. It's like your hands will barely, go fast enough, and you got to have a straight edge, and and you got to have a big enough map, and so.
Not anymore. Not with computers. Yeah. No.
Yeah, not with computers, but it was, it's a little easier to do by hand if you're getting a straight download. But so I figured that the closest I could get to the area I wanted to be, which is this series of mountains and lakes to the east of Jackman, Maine, which is pretty far up there, would be to go to Jackman and go to the lake because it was mud season, the roads weren't good. And my friend was like, yeah, I really want to have an experience. You think if we go up there we'll have an experience? And I'm like, well, my friend who's giving me all this info says we'll probably have an experience if we go up there. So we took a weekend and we went to Jackman and stayed in a cabin and went to bed. And my dream, quote-unquote dream during the night, was that all of a sudden I could see through the cabin wall down toward the lake. And the lake, I could see that the lake was like lit up with this eerie glow, and coming out of this glow toward me was this humongous owl, this humongous gray-blue owl. And the owl flew through the wall and was basically on top of me, like sitting on me, but it was literally too large to be an owl. And just looking into my eyes. So, and that was the only experience that we had. But the thing is, he also had the same experience of the owl flying through the wall.
Oh, that same night.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So he woke up in the morning and said, "Did you see the owl?" And I went, "Did you see the owl?" Because I thought it was my dream. And that was it. That was as much as we got.
Very interesting. Okay, very interesting. Yeah, no, I remember you telling me this now. Yeah. Yes. So what we have there is a very perfect, clear example of what I would call a screen memory. I don't think that there was an owl in the room, but something was projecting the image of an owl.
Projecting that it was an owl. Right.
Yes.
It was telling us it was an owl. Wyatt, come here. Oh my goodness, this dog. So anyway, what have you heard? What have you heard that's similar? You must have heard a lot. Come here, Wyatt.
Oh, of that type of thing? Well, I've certainly heard a lot in that cars. And I can tell a couple stories. You can put me on mute if you want, or you can put yourself on mute and then chime in.
I'm going to put myself on mute. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so here's the story. This took place in. Oh, wait a minute! I have so many stories to tell. I got to remember which one it was going to be now. Okay. So this was a woman in Australia, and she had a lifetime of very unusual experiences. She talked about her consciousness being taken over by a 15th century knight, William the Conqueror, and it sounds completely absurd, and it was really traumatic for her. She did not like it, and she eventually formally asked, so this isn't working. You need to leave my consciousness, and that seemed to have worked. So she was very, very open to unusual events after that. She started helping out with some UFO research, kind of a club, a little organization, folks doing sky watches at night. So it was during this time she was driving with her husband at night. She was in the passenger seat. Her husband was in the driver's seat, and she had the thought to herself, like, I'm ready to see an alien. Like after all the hard work I've done, after all the hard work I've been doing with this UFO club and the work I've been doing, I'm ready. I'm ready to see one. And she hears a very clear voice in her head that says, "You are not ready to see us. You are not ready to see us." And she was like, "What, huh?" And then the voice said, "We don't want to startle you." And she said, "Poof," as if anything could startle me. And at that moment, bam, an owl flew right into her windshield. And she watched this owl fly from the barrier alongside the road. They're driving through a forested area. She watched the owl lift off this barrier and fly right at her and smash right into her line of sight. They stopped the car. The assumption was they were going to find a dead owl. They found nothing. And this happened a couple stories like this where people hit an owl so hard they assume they're going to find a dead owl. They find nothing. The interesting thing for me is on a purely like metaphoric level. If this was a dream and I was a dream analyst, I would think about the clues that are in this story. Now, it's not a dream; it's a real event, but I'm going to treat it like a dream, or treat the events symbolically. She said that she saw the owl lift up from the barrier. Now, that's the metaphoric role of the owl throughout almost all of the mythologies in the world, that the owl is, in essence, capable of passing beyond the barrier. The owl flies at night. That becomes a metaphor for flying into the darkness, for flying into other realms. The owl can then fly off into other realms, pass the barrier, fly into the darkness, come back, and retrieve a message. This may be from the land of the dead, from the land of the ancestors, from the land of the gods. How would we say it now? Another dimension. So the owl was in the barrier between the road and the forest, and the forest is in like a purely symbolic level. And this is not deep stuff here. Where the forest is the place of testing. The forest is a place of darkness. The forest is the place where you go to get your answers and to get your testing. That's what the Hobbit did. I mean, that's what Bilbo Baggins did. He went into the forest. And the path, the road, that's life's journey. So here she is. She's on life's journey. The owl, the barrier between her and this place of testing, flies right in. She says, as if anything could startle me, and then bam, the owl startles her. In essence, perhaps giving up its life to make its point.
That's so interesting because you're talking about the barrier, and there is, for an experiencer, we have significant barriers to finding out what we've been through, to finding out what we have already experienced. I mean, there's the barrier of going into the unknown, which we already know because we've already been there, but we don't know that we know it. And then, like even the John Mack group, I was putting up a barrier of, hey, that's a big, scary, weird guy. I don't want to be a part of any club he's a part of. So it's interesting that you can put it together that way. Go on, continue. Tell me more.
Well, so there's a handful of there's a little section in the book, windshields, owls and windshields. Owls hitting windshields, owls flying above windshields. Cars at night, people seeing owls. So I have one story of couple. They were driving back from a experiencer support group run by Barbara Lamb in Los Angeles. And this is not off in the woods somewhere. This is in busy Los Angeles. And they are talking about God while driving home from the experiencer support group. An owl flies in front of their car on the freeway in Los Angeles, and they look at the clock and it's 11:11. So here you have like the convergence of a bunch of stuff. Two people, both of them experiencers, see an owl at 11:11, which is kind of a prescient number in all of this stuff. People report it a lot as far as sort of a synchronistic number that seems to, hold some sort of power. Mm-hmm. And then once again, similar to the story with me and the seeing those owls with Kristen at night, the conversation about God seems to be punctuated by the appearance of an owl.
Or 3 owls. If you're Catholic, that's a big deal.
Yeah, well, I'm not Catholic, but so the 3 owls, the 3 owls.
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Yeah.
Oh yes,
the night that you were sitting out there, you had the Trinity owls. Wow, interesting. So, you had more things happen though yourself that from 44 when you decided to look into this until now. What were some of the things that you feel comfortable sharing about that owls had some play into opening you up to exploring? Can you tell us more about that?
Well, okay, there's a lot of events that took place in those years where so just as far as my life trajectory, what I did in 2009, I started an online blog, and the blog is still up now, I did a lot of audio interviews for a while, and I initially, you don't have to read between the lines to sense the anguish in my voice. It's right there. I was really in a place of turmoil, and it was a very odd sort of social experiment that I did where I put myself out there, talked about my memories, and wrestled with them in a very public forum. I'd write these essays about my experiences, and I feel like there was a power in doing that so publicly and so formally, of going online and basically anyone in the world was one click away from reading my essays. As the years progressed, I got a little more calm. 2009, 2010 were pretty rough for me. I was pretty shaken up, trying to come to terms with this. It felt like, my previous definition of reality had crumbled. And honestly, I wasn't having what I feel was UFO contact experiences in any way. I was having what would be owl experiences and synchronicities. Synchronicities just so profound, often having to do with owls and UFOs. And so these synchronicities were so real and so ever present that I couldn't shake them. I couldn't say, I'm just going to blow this off. No, it forced me to pay attention. So it wasn't, these memories of, like as a boy I saw a UFO very clear in the nighttime sky. It looked like a coffee can. Saw it for maybe 30 seconds, and then, poof, it disappeared. And, what I used to do when I told the story, I would say, the lights turned off and I couldn't see it anymore. But I knew I was lying because what had actually happened is it disappeared. And I just felt like that would have been, I don't know, just like rude almost to say something so absurd. Since then, I've read enough of the UFO accounts that, no, it did not just click off. The lights didn't just shut off. It vanished in the, one click, one blink. It was gone.
Yeah.
So I was wrestling with all these. Oh, go on.
There's quite a lot of self-protection in that. And my sister used to say to me, she would say, you can't really talk to people about your experiences if they haven't had them, or even if they have had them, because they'll want to get in your space and hack you up, and she meant energetically, So not talking about experiences, there's a lot of, you're protecting yourself.
Yeah. So I went from not talking about them, which, actually I could talk about them. I could sit around a campfire, or maybe like a casual conversation, and this stuff would come up, odd things, and so here, let me tell you some stories, and I could tell these odd stories, and I just kind of they had no, I would just kind of tell these things that now sound so, obvious, and then I would just kind of like, oh, who would have thunk? Isn't that interesting? Oh, and then just kind of move on to talk about the weather.
Yeah. Make it not a big deal, and hopefully nobody else will get
Well, I recognize they were interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I certainly recognize they were interesting.
Yeah. That was funny for me. I mean, some of the things. It took me writing a book to have people like call me up and say, "Do you remember? Did you put this in the book? Do you remember when this happened?" And then I could relax about it, but until people, somebody in the family would say, "Oh, she wrote a book," and somebody who had an experience with me would say, "Well, do you remember when this happened? Did you put it in the book?" I'd be like,
yeah.
I thought you were going to get in my space and hack me up and, say I was lying, and nobody did. At least not so far. Nobody has come out
I bet
and
you there's probably some that's my sense, is that people are much more gentle now than they would have been if we turn the clock back 20 years. I think of when Whitley Strieber came forward with his book Communion. He was, kind of vilified in the public, and but at the same time his book was immensely popular and touched a nerve. So those things have changed enormously in those that quarter of a century. Yeah, that's my sense too. I've had very, very little negative blowback from talking about these experiences. A little bit, mostly just kind of like people rolling their eyes, not anything necessarily saying things mean, but just kind of dismissive in their tone, which I understand. I don't, but for the most part, people have been wildly supportive. Yeah, even if they say I don't get it, they seem to recognize that I'm not. That these things are in me and they needed to come out.
Yeah, a sort of more of a acceptance of people expressing their truth and noticing what John Mack used to call veracity, but there was another word he used, truthiness. That you may not understand the truth, but if you're telling the truth, people get a sense that what you're saying has the ring of truth to it, and that they are listening to a truth, much like your friend Kristen talking about her truest, deepest understanding of God, that there is a truth here. Interesting. So, moving on, your life has changed incredibly since in the last couple of years. What's been going on since things calmed down? What's happening now?
Well, one of the things I started doing is in the summer of 2013, was it 2013? Yeah. Summer of 2013. Yeah, the summer of 2013, I wrote an essay that was, which is only 2 years ago now, really. I wrote an essay with the title of, Owls and the UFO Abductee, and it was about 40 pages long. And that essay is the foundation for this the book that I have out now. I basically multiplied by 10, so it went from 40 pages to nearly 400 pages. In the act of writing that, I just kind of abandoned myself to it. I just kind of surrendered to the act of writing. And it was a little sloppy. I mean, I didn't really have an outline to start with, but what was happening, and I had a blog, and I would put out, little things in the blog. Hey, if anyone has an owl story and is connected to UFOs, I'd love to hear it. And then, I did that enough and got quoted and had a little, but so at a certain point there was, like, if you looked me up online, let me just step back. If you looked up owls and UFOs, typed owls, UFOs in the search engine in Google, my name came up. And that's because I'd been writing about it and writing a lot about it. So if anyone in the world, someone in, Finland had an experience with an owl and a UFO, they typed it into Google, my name would come up and they would find me instantly. So I started receiving these stories. And for a while it was, one a day is a bit of an exaggeration, but it was very close to one a day. And I made an effort to try to follow up on these stories and talk to these folks, and it was so, I don't know how to say it, like I felt like my whole life just got sort of immersed in this synchronistic cloud where I wasn't really doing, like you think of a researcher, right? They kind of roll up their sleeves and they've got their, their clipboard and they go to the Library of Congress and they, they toil away and that wasn't it at all. I was basically getting up in the morning and opening my email inbox, and just the perfect story at the perfect moment was arriving in my lap. And it was shocking how much power that had. And so from those stories, that's the core of the book. One of the problems was, once you tell a story once, I say in the book that, I'm very cautious not to, I basically feel like I'm hitting people over the head with very similar owl stories one after another. But, there's no one-offs in the book, right? So if anything you're reading in the book or anything I talk about here, it isn't just standing alone without something to back it up. Any story I tell or any story I share in a written format would be backed up by other stories, the stories I've already told, that I've heard. I wouldn't just share it if it was only one story. But so that's what's been going on in my life. Like I've given myself over. I was, so that's for the past year, I've, it's been a full-time job trying to get this book done.
So how many, just point of curiosity, about how many emails or stories did you get?
Oh yeah. Many hundreds. Yeah. So that's okay. Just off the top of my head. Whether it's a bit over 100 or I don't know. That's maybe it's less than 100. I don't know. But it was some of them were a little bit. Yeah. 100, more than 100-ish. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Okay. And it's very hard to quantify some of these because some of them are a little soft. They don't have they're kind of. It's like you kind of have to get back to the person and say, well, that could have been something, it could have been anything. And then there's other ones that where someone, let me just think. Some of the examples are very clear, like a guy, fellow camping out at night, looking up at the stars. He's sitting with his buddy. They're having a conversation. They look up at a cactus. This is out in the desert, and they say, "Oh my gosh, look, there's a big owl on top of that cactus." And the owl looks at them, and they look at the owl, and there's kind of owls have an intense presence. They have a mood to them. They have a vibe, an aura to them, and it's an unsettling feeling to be stared at by a big owl. The little owls tend to be a little cuter, but and so they commented that was, "Ooh, this is unnerving," and then the owl flew off. And minutes later, a big triangle UFO, cruised right above them and continued on down the canyon. So I have that story in a few forms. Almost all of them where the owl shows up first and then the UFO. I have a few where the UFO shows up first and then the owl, though not many. So it's usually owl that'll be the what would you call it? The announcer, the introduction would be made by the owl, and then the UFO would arrive on the stage.
Wow.
And I felt like I just had to be careful because I could tell the same story over and over and over again, and the book would lose its. Well, that's not my job as an author in a way to just be repetitive, I guess. Yeah,
to say how many times has that happened, or how many different accounts do you have?
Yeah. So I pick an interesting account and one that's representative of the other accounts,
So what did you find out about, John Mack used to like to say that there is something shamanistic about UFO experiences. Was there anything that you found when you looked back at human history with owls that would point to that or allude to that, or anything that you could tell us that might
Well, sure.
That's
It's funny because as I was working on the book, people say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I kind of have to size the person up, like, "Okay, can I really say what I'm doing? Can I really say that I'm working on a UFO book about my own experiences?" And so I'd say, like, "Oh, I'm working on a book on owls, Like, "Oh, owls, that's interesting. A book on owls." And so I don't say UFOs. I say, "Well, it's a book on the mythology of owls," which is true. This is what I consider the mythology of owls, where in ancient lore, the owl held a position, a symbolic position. In ancient Greece, it would have been wisdom and artistry, commerce. That was all Athena, the goddess of wisdom. She had a companion owl. So the owl represents. That's where even today we get the wise owl, and little elementary school kids with a thumbtacked picture of an owl with a little graduation cap on the bulletin board as the school year ends. That comes from Athena. Other cultures had a much darker view of the owl and saw the owl as like sort of a harbinger of doom. The Native Americans, especially the Western Native Americans, had a very sinister and foreboding mythology, or still do have a very sinister and foreboding mythology around the owls. I mean, in the Bible, the owl is mentioned between 12 and 16 times, depending on the translation. And it's interesting, there's really not much going on with the owl in the Bible, except that it is used as almost like an adjective, the same way you would put an owl, a hooting owl in a haunted house movie. Right? You're just setting the mood. So it seems to be the owl is sort of setting the mood for this creepy, spooky, nightmarish, dark thing. And in a way, so my premise in a way is that the owl, I don't think you have to be a UFO abductee to have a powerful owl experience. I would be foolish to say that. I think that all kinds of people can have powerful owl experiences that would take on a more of a totem role or more of a symbolic role. But my sense is that people recognize this throughout the ages, that these owls had this power. There's nothing I'm experiencing that someone didn't experience outside their hut. Like out in the plains of North Dakota at one point, or wherever in the jungles of Brazil. As far as my having a lot of owl experiences and then being forced to go on basically an internal journey to try to answer the questions, I sense that the UFO occupants know that and are somehow choosing or orchestrating the owls for very specific reasons, for archetypal reasons, where the owl would still have its mythic power today. Like for the most part, we live in a society where we don't give any credence to these ancient myths. So if we see an owl, we're just seeing a bird. That wouldn't be true if you're walking down the path in your village, where 500 years ago, let's say anywhere, in northern Russia or southern Africa, the owl would have some message, and that's deciphering what that message might be is the challenge.
And then before anyone knew it, they disappeared. That was episode 1 of Mike Clelland and Elizabeth Anglin talking about the owls and their connection to both their experiences as alien abductees. And tomorrow night, we'll pick up more where that left off with episode 2. Again, Mike Clelland, Elizabeth Anglin talking about their owl experiences. And I tell you, when I was a kid, I almost got knocked off a motorcycle. I was doing about 40 miles an hour. Great big owl took off from a fence post, flew, and it was at night, flew across in front of me at about chest level. And I always remember just kind of leaning back on my motorcycle. I swear that thing was going to get me chest, just take me out. And somebody'd find me covered in feathers, dead on the road. But it missed. Very interesting conversation about the owl connection. We're going to come back with more from Mike and Elizabeth tomorrow, 9 o'clock, the beginning here on Cosmic Passport, and it'll be the follow-up, the second episode of Elizabeth's conversation with Mike Clelland. And for you, listener, in 6 minutes, we're going to be back with a gentleman who, listen carefully, because he has one of them accents that even I have a hard time catching up to. Very Parisian. It's very, very, very nice accent, but he is a story that you're not going to believe. Abduction, psychic connection with extraterrestrials, and channeling. Yes, that's Sebastian Martin. He shall be back in 6 minutes.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large. Heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
It's time to go live on Spaced Out Weekend.
13, please. Oh, hi, Kevin. Oh, is that the time? Kevin, my friend, don't you find that watch just a little bit loud? Well, I certainly hope our buddy Bumblefoot is playing when we get there. Oh, you stinky big bundle of hair. I said Bumblefoot, not Bigfoot. Oh, it's going to be a long night.
It's time to head to the 13th floor of the old log cabin for Spaced Out Weekend with James Tyson. You can tweet James at James Tyson SOR. You can find him on Instagram, Spaced Out Weekend, as well as on Facebook. On YouTube, our channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can check out our website, spacedoutradio.com.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere. Watching me.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
And now, perched high in his captain's chair, way above the clouds, here's James Tyson.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Spaced Out Weekend. Sorry, just had to do that. It is I, James Tyson, broadcasting to you from my little log cabin on the 13th floor of the Spaced Out Radio Network here in the paranormal portals of the lower left Canadian coast. And tonight, on the front end of a blizzard, looking out of the little cabin here, down the hill and the snow-covered roads and the trees and the cars spinning sideways and going over the cliffs. We welcome you and hope you had a wonderful week. Tonight, we have a wonderful guest to top off your wonderful week. But first, to remind you, we do broadcast 7 days a week, and we want to be your one-stop shop when it comes to the supernatural, paranormal, conspiracy, UFOs, spiritual, and more. Our music on our intros, our extras, and anywhere in between is by the guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, and he is the main man behind our music. Bumblefoot is the official sound of Spaced Out Radio. You can also check us out on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. You can go harass Dave there, or on Twitter at Spaced Out Weekend. Feel free to harass me. Go down to James Tyson on Facebook, on Instagram, on all other bits and pieces of social media flying out there. You can listen to us by our website, spacedoutradio.com. You can find us on iTunes. You can download us later on both iTunes and YouTube and something called TuneIn, which Dave hasn't really updated me on. It's some secret thing. Again, our website, spacedoutradio.com, and I'd like to remind you to, if you have an opportunity, to sign up for the SOR Space Travelers Club. It's $5 a month, and with that you get your name entered into a monthly prize draw, access to private group interviews, access to a special section on the website, and much, much, much more. We are giving you a heck of a lot more than just our archives. You, in fact, will get my old socks. Yes, my old socks. Oh, sorry. Who put that there? Oh, okay. That's not supposed to be on then. We'd like to thank everybody listening to us through the chat rooms, the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook at the UFO Chronicles of the Unknown, Forest Moon Paranormal, at our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. While at Space spacedoutradio.com. You can read our latest blogs and check out Eric Markham's SOR Space Wire for your latest in weird news. We also have a new future on the webs. We have a new future. You've tuned in properly. That's going out to all our people who are listening to us from New Zealand and Australia in the future, those listening to us tomorrow. We have a new feature on the website. The SOR Sight Lines is there for you if you've had an experience and wanted it investigated by a researcher, Mike Schmidt. Just fill out the Sight Lines report and we'll get back to you. All information is 100% confidential. We want to thank our new affiliate, the United Public Radio Network at 107.7 in New Orleans, and their sisters and listeners from over 160 countries around the world, and to those out there in the millions and millions of homes on our planet who have an opportunity to listen to us, but don't even know we exist. So to them, I'd like to say hello too. And one of the things that what fascinated me about my guest tonight is that he is he's kind of a crossover experiencer, and what I mean by that, when I was talking to him about the show, he went on and told me a few things that he experienced, and this is going back, like, he's experienced anything from channeling to being an experiencer, an abductee experiencer, and amazing young man. Sebastian Martin, born in France, he has built international health food brands for over a decade with offices in the U.S., Canada, UK, New Zealand. In November of 2011, he had a close encounter of the fifth kind with a stellar being living in a fifth dimensional reality in his living room. Now, I'm pretty sure the fifth dimensional reality isn't only in Sebastian's living room, but he did have communications with him and the rest of his star family ever since, receiving frequent and powerful downloads, all aimed to raise our consciousness and change our vibrations. Now, this is a one-of-a-kind, disturbing experience that has forced Sebastian to resort to the services of a hypnotherapist to help him with the anxiety arising from this life-changing encounter, as well as prophetic visions that he's had since a child. So we can see just in this that they are connected. Detailed memories were extracted from these sessions, providing critical information about the Galactic Alliance agenda, split souls, human consciousness, and much, much more. More recent visits involving 11th dimensional beings reinforce Sebastian's beliefs to pursue this mission and to share it with the mass population. Now, if you want to follow Sebastian, go to his Facebook page. Just put it up in the search engine, Sebastian Martin. Now, he's from France, so it's Sebastian, the T-I-E-N. Sebastien Martin. He is now setting up a platform to help starseeds around the world, but also offers a free platform to network all singled out, specifically specialty domains such as alternative medicine, alternative energy, UFO disclosure, consciousness work, etc. And we're going to talk to him a little bit more about that. And of course, go to his Facebook link. If you are on the Spaced Out Radio SOR Space Travelers group on Facebook, if you open up the advert for this show, right at the bottom, there's a link to his Facebook. And anybody else who's followed us or found us through Facebook, you'll be able to find those links there. And before he hangs up or falls asleep, Sebastian, how are you this evening?
Great, thank you very much, James, and thank you very much for having me on your show.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. This is fascinating to me because I get a lot of people on who, have a bit of a psychic, a sensitive background, but have not really had the crossover that you have. especially with beings of those dimensions.
Right.
Could you take my listener back into when you were a child? What types of what would you call now a paranormal event do you recall?
Well, I was always very interested in UFOs, paranormal in general, but really just in general, because I couldn't really pinpoint where and why this interest arose from. I was reading stories about Roswell when I was like 11 years old, and I have no idea why I was so attracted to it at that point. But just very early on, when I was with my dad, my parents split up when I was 7 years old. And when I was staying at my dad's house, which was like an old house in the south of France, and it was an old barn converted into like a 3-story house. And when I was living in the, on the 3rd story, I always like felt there was a presence around me, and I couldn't really understand what was going on. It was very almost part of my day-to-day life or routine, but it never scared me. It's something that arose from those experiences. I've seen silhouettes traveling through the living room or the kitchen, but it never scared me ever. Like for me, seeing a ghost was like normal thing. I was not haunted myself. I don't feel that I was or think I was. But I was just curious, really. It just was more of an interest that rather than being scared by anything that was happening around me. So I guess along the years, I kind of developed this basic interest about what was happening in this realm, but without really being distracted. I was still very grounded. I was, I liked studying, going to school. I was not really an outcast by far. I was really pretty much shallow to the extent that I was pretty much interested in what every kid was interested in growing up and as a teenager. So I had, good friends, and I never really shared those experiences with them in the first place, because I knew instinctively that they would not understand what I was going through as a child. I knew the differences between other realities and this reality. And so to me, it was very clear that I just had to keep it to myself and live through it. So when I was growing up, when I reached about the age of 14 years old, I started to, doing some stupid things and not showing up to class and after a cold, and I just didn't like the school I was in, and so I was kind of playing up. And my dad punished me and sent me off to a private school, which was managed by local monks, and it was a rigid type of teaching, but it was a boarding school as well. So I didn't just go there during the day and came back home at night. I was just staying there every day and at night as well. And it kind of gave me this kind of good background, discipline that I needed, I guess, as a teenager. And while being there, I was very interested in studies, and I really like history very much, and philosophy, so much that when I reached the age of 16 years old, I was helping students who were basically 2 years ahead of me to do their French baccalaureate in philosophy and literature, because I was very fascinated by books about philosophy in general, especially when I started reading about Plato and other philosophers in those days. So that, Greek philosophers were, for whatever reason, when I was 16 years old, became of a high interest to me, because for whatever reason, once again, I was attracted to stories about the Atlantis. And Plato was the first one, I believe, who wrote about it in ancient Greece. And I was also having very weird experiences that year, starting with very strong prophetic visions of classmates, for example. One of them in broad daylight, I was in a Spanish class, and I was all of a sudden I was seeing the event right in front of my eyes. Maybe I wasn't just paying attention, I was daydreaming, you could say that. And I could see that girl in my class who basically was on a almost like motorcycle, and she was leaving the school, and she was being hit by a car on the right-hand side. And I thought that she was going to die, basically. So I really was so shocked by the information that I had to write it down on a piece of paper, and I placed it into a pen case in the class or during the break. And when she saw the note, she said, who wrote this? And when I basically explained to her that it came from me, she was very mad, and her friends, as you can imagine, as a group of friends, started to bicker about me. And it went away pretty quickly. I apologized, and that was it. But a year later, the accident, the way I described it, actually happened. And what was interesting about this event, not that it was actually, exciting, but the event occurred. The girl didn't die; she became paraplegic, and the person who hit her on the right-hand side in the car was the Spanish teacher I was having a lesson with that day of the vision. So that really startled me at first, because I guess it was the first very strong prophetic vision I had in my life.
Wow.
And I was kind of getting used to it after a while, but that was the real first visions I had with someone I really knew. So it was not something about the world, or it was very close to me.
When you're getting a vision, what? Actually, I'm going to go back to a question we had from Tiffany on the Spreaker chat room. You were talking about the shadows or the silhouette people.
Yes.
Do you believe those were light people back then, or did the light people come later in life?
I had interactions in my life with dark silhouettes and light silhouettes, so I can tell that there are differences between them. I don't believe they are evil or good silhouettes or beings. I just believe it's just a reflection of their experiences. So, for example, I had an interaction in my house when I was a child with dark silhouettes, which were not feeling threatening to me, but I knew that they had terrible upbringing. They had some bad experiences of their own, which they kind of carried through in the afterlife. And same thing happened to me in New Zealand when I stayed there with my wife, and we stayed in a youth hostel. And we didn't know anything about the youth hostel. It was actually one of the most ancient buildings in New Zealand. And we ended up staying in this old bedroom that was in the attic, basically, of this youth hostel at the time when we were just world traveling. And in the middle of the night, I woke up screaming. And there was this black silhouette standing right above me, on my bed. And I was just screaming, because I felt actually attacked at that point. I mean, it basically woke me up in the middle of the night. And I basically went through it to actually switch on the light. And I could feel the chill going through that black silhouette. And as I did this, I understood what this black silhouette was all about. And this was about a man who hanged himself in this bedroom, way back when.
Wow.
So it was all about the experience rather than, carrying an evil message to, beings they had encountered with. And every time it's all about asking for help, asking for, not really understanding what was happening to them. They had a hard time matching the afterlife with the, basically the reality. And they were just imprisoned into this space. And so, because I was very intuitive and very empathic right from the get-go, they were always almost trying to reach out to me to ask for my help. And for a very, very long time, I've never been able to understand that or help them with it, because I didn't have the practice, or I didn't know how, basically. Now it's very easy, but in those days it was kind of a challenge. But I also had some other interactions with kind of light beings that silhouettes that became very real. Like I could see them, like I could see you, or I could see someone else in the street. It was very strange. I was again sleeping in my wife's mother's house in England, and we were just like sleeping in this bedroom that was supposedly already haunted. Like basically people in the family saw this teenage girl in that room a few times. And so as a joke, my wife said, well, let's try to stay there, tonight and see what happens. And clearly enough, during the night, I was again woken up by this silhouette that walked towards me. But this silhouette materialized into this girl that was walking on that floor. And it scared me because I could see her walking through my wife's bed. We had like two single beds in this old English house. We didn't have like the luxury of having a king size bed to share, but it was just the way it was. And as the girl was like going through like a plasma being, I screamed because I didn't know what was going to happen, and she was heading right for me. And so once again, I switched on the light and I kind of shook it off, and the being just disappeared. When my wife woke up and my mother-in-law woke up as well, wondering what was happening in the house. But this was one of those encounters that I had that I kind of chuckle over it now after looking back. But now I understand that those presences happen because I'm very intuitive and I can understand those presences now. But in those days, I just couldn't. So that's pretty much the answer I have on those silhouettes. On the positive side, I had a very strong, like heartfelt experience with light beings that came into my bedroom at night, and it woke me up. But I didn't scream this time because they were just queuing up. And that's when my wife was pregnant with our 3-month-old. She was pregnant, and she was only 3-month-old pregnant. So I could see those beings queuing up and bending down towards the womb, almost trying to find out if there could be a suitable soul for our child, our unborn child. And that's pretty much the message that I received when I was like visually seeing that happening. I was witnessing it, being wide awake. I woke up, I opened my eyes, I looked at it, and I could see those beings queuing up, bending, stretching up again, and leaving the room, knowing that they could not be a good fit for this child. So that was a very profound experience to that extent. And I never felt threatened. It was just a very nice feeling, knowing that our child was going to be looked after by those light beings, basically, or just trying to find the right match for this child. And I believe that we are all kind of the same, but to a different extent. For example, while I was having those experiences with those light beings, I was also seeing UFOs. I was also having prophetic visions. And I think one of the main one that I had while my wife was still pregnant was that when one night I woke up and I had 3 visions very clearly, and I wrote them down on a piece of paper. And the next morning I woke up and I looked at my notes, and one of them was about an airplane crash, and it was basically a weird experience again, not very good, and had nothing to do with silhouettes, but it was more about the visions. And I was in the body of this teenage boy who rolled down the aisle of his small airline, and the airline was about to crash. And sure enough, when I looked up on the news, there were 2 airlines that crashed. There was one, I believe, a UPS crash, and I think the pilot and the co-pilot died. And another airline that crashed, which more was about the description that I was seeing, was about, I think, a group of 10 teenagers that went on a school trip to Colorado or something, and they crashed in the mountains. So that was about 5 years ago.
Wow.
Or 6 years ago, actually. Close to 7, actually, because my wife was pregnant and my daughter is just 6 years old now. So that's pretty much around the right time frame. And so that was one of them. And the second most vivid vision I had was about being in a body of an assassin, being on a rooftop and looking at about 11 o'clock direction towards this prime minister. I knew he was a prime minister of a certain country. I didn't really know which one. I saw him through the binoculars, and I could see his face very clearly. But I could not see myself as being the actual assassin. I say assassin, but I was part of the plot that killed him. And again, it was not in a past life. It was basically something that occurred 6 years earlier than my vision. So when I looked it up online on Google Images, I just realized that I just typed in Prime Minister assassinated. That's what I typed in Google. And throughout all those images, I could see this man with a mustache. And he was the Prime Minister of Lebanon, who basically got killed 6 years earlier. In a bomb, he was killed in his car, which is exactly the setting I saw him as under, in this vision. So it was very interesting because the event happened. I knew that the man on the roof was not going to be the one killing him, but somehow it was almost like a backup plan, or either way, it was part of it. And I don't want to really dwell into that because it was just to explain the prophetic visions I used to have, and I've managed to control them in a much better way now. But it's just about the experience, and just to show that my wife was next to me in the bed when we were looking at those images, and because she didn't have the visions that I had, obviously she's not really even open to it, but she has witnessed many prophetic visions of mine, and she's kind of the person who doesn't really want to believe in it and doesn't want to think about it because it scares her. In fact, when I first met her, she said, I don't want to hear about your visions. I am too scared by them, because obviously she may have been scared about me seeing her, either dead or, splitting up or something, because that's pretty much the fear that she had about the visions. So I blocked it off for 10 years, and they all came back in full force when my wife became pregnant 10 years later. So that's pretty much the way it went. And
yeah, going back, and again, I would be fascinated to, my tongue just fell out. No, you were talking about your wife being pregnant in bed.
Yeah.
And the light beings come in and they're looking at her. I would have flipped my cork. I'd be wondering why.
It didn't feel that way. It didn't feel that way. It felt normal almost. It was part of. It almost like gave me an answer about the circle of life, on Earth, as to how this works to do with the energy beings. I guess we have those experiences, and then you have those beings queuing up to find out which ones could become the right soul for this being. Now, what's interesting about this is, because we kind of live on different timelines almost, we could be seeing this as part of our current present, but it could be happening on a whole different level, meaning that maybe those events could have occurred or could have been thought about beforehand, or prior to my wife becoming pregnant, which pretty much happened to me in my life. I kind of came to realize that I was almost like preconceived 20 years before I, became this, being on Earth. So it's a very, complex story that I could probably go into later on. But the story that I want to say about the visions about the Prime Minister is that I was always living those experiences as a first person. So seeing the experience like I was living it, but knowing that I was not that man. It was not a past life regression or anything else. It was just, I was embodying this person. And, this happened to me quite a fair bit in my life, I have to say. And every time I had like a past life regression or like an hypnosis session, for example, I always leave those experiences as a first person. So I can see my hands, I can see my feet or my body, but I can't see my face. And so that's very, intriguing, because I could never really look at it as from a distance in that sense. I was feeling the emotions of the person. I was living it. It's I guess part of the empathic state of mind that I have living those experiences. But moving forward, when I knew that I was connected to something else that I could not really understand, I was just like living those experiences without being frightened, because it was almost kind of interesting, but that was it. I was pretty much, like I said, grounded. I was starting a business with my wife. We started a honey business that became very international very quickly, and so we had to hire employees and grow the business. And so we basically didn't have much time to really think about anything else. But unfortunately, as we were expanding and becoming more like serial entrepreneurs, doing some more businesses out there, I basically was still bombarded by those visions. And after a while, you can imagine, it started to become kind of a pain, because it was disturbing me, my day-to-day life. And so step by step, I started developing those physical ailments. Like I had like some pains in my shoulders or my back, or because I was almost like living through those experiences, but almost not being able to understand why. It was just like bombarding me and coming to me at random, and I could not control any of these visions. So
there's one of the guys, John Connor, is in our chat room on Facebook. Mm-hmm. He says it's fascinating. He's also seen through the eyes of others, but with no apparent purpose other than to personally experience poignant moments in their lives.
Right.
is
Yes.
that kind of what you get?
Well, kind of. I mean, basically, the experience I had as the assassin of the Prime Minister of Lebanon was very vivid, and because I could not really understand why I had a vision of something that happened 6 years earlier, then I asked my wife, I said, let's switch on the news. And we put on the TV, and the first channel that appeared was about it was a live cast, and the journalist then was saying the trial of the assassins of the Prime Minister of Lebanon is starting, or basically they were like showing the faces of the people that were supposed to be convicted for the assassination of the Prime Minister of Lebanon, and that was actually a live cast. Like it was not talked about the day before. I was having those visions during the night. So it was very strange that it happened on the first channel that we just switched on looking at those things. It was very intriguing. So it kind of almost like gave me a confirmation that I was somehow tuned in live as to what was happening in this world. Basically, just somehow randomly I was connecting to those events. But I could not again control it, because it was just coming to me as an experience, and this kind of came to me as well the same way. So basically I was just living it and taking notes, but that's pretty much it. So I could not tie it in with anything else specifically about what was going to be happening later on in my life. So that was just those events kind of gave me a confirmation that something was happening. And the same way as when my wife was pregnant, I also had a vision of my daughter, my unborn daughter, not knowing the sex of the baby at the time, that she was going to be basically a 20-year-old woman walking in that corridor, and I could see this dimple in her chin that she has now at 6 years old that we both don't have. So somehow I could feature her, and I described her to my wife. And that gave her this kind of level of comfort that allowed her to basically, give me, free will to experience whatever I wanted. And that was kind of a sword of, a double-edged sword, because I was welcoming those visions so much that I was having about 2 to 3 visions per day. And so it came so unknowing and just overwhelming for me in my day-to-day life that I was trying to basically just brush them off. And when I was meeting people and I was having visions, I wasn't even sharing those visions with them, because I was thinking, I don't want to go into that. I don't want to start, telling people whatever. So I just kept it to myself, basically. And until I was seeing those visions of cataclysms, like, earthquakes, and it was just basically very traumatic. I could see like tsunamis. As you know, we're on the west coast of Canada, and we're prone to those tsunamis and earthquakes anyway. But I was actually seeing the events in detail, like, where I was living on this farm in the Cowichan Valley. And I was then seeing it with a bird's eye view, and I was seeing it, along the coast of America, and then it just like broadened out so much that I could see the whole map of North America. So it was quite traumatic, because it was given to me in small pieces, basically throughout time, and I was not welcoming it. I was not hoping for it. It just came. And so at one point, it just created so much stress in my life that I basically like started talking to local people about, what I was seeing. And I actually, probably about, 5 years ago, met a woman who was a local psychic. And she said to me, after hearing my story about those earthquake events and tsunamis, she said, well, let me show you something. And she opened up an old book that she had from the 1970s. And it was a notebook, and I could see her writing, and the event that she was describing about the place I was on Vancouver Island, and the clock tower that was in the town I was living in, or still live in, was basically just slightly above water, and the event itself was written up by this woman in that notebook. So there was some correlation from the visions I had and the ones she wrote down back in the 1970s. So that really startled me, and I was like starting like panicking, and I was like basically looking into seminars for earthquake prevention, or trying to have like survival gears and put it in my truck and all of that, because I was really getting worried, and especially with a young family, as you can imagine. So I started to contemplate on that, and after a while I said, I need help. I can't just do this on my own. It's just becoming too unbearable and too much, and I can't really share this with my wife because it would just panic her. So I basically kept it to myself for so long that I decided to resort to the services of a local clinical hypnotherapist who was basically doing some runs at the local hospital and clinics and helping people with cancer and so on. And so I said, I will be welcoming whatever help I can get. And so I saw in her profile that she was helping people stop smoking cigarettes, or helping just young mothers about basically making the pregnancy more comfortable for people. Mm-hmm. And so I said, this is the right person for me. All I'm looking for is someone who can help me with my stress and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And so I basically didn't really ask for much, and I was I called her and I said, look, I'm having visions, and I hope you can help me with it. And first thing she said to me on the phone was, I don't have any judgments. Whatever you go through, I can help you with, and we can just take it from there. And that's pretty much what the conversation was about. And so we hung up, and for a week I waited for this appointment, and during that week I had the most crazy encounter or dream to begin with. At night, I had this teenage boy's face showing up. And he was just very unusual, to the extent that his eyes were much bigger than human eyes. His cheekbones were higher than humans. And he had this most beautiful smile, like basically you could think he was from Hollywood or something, but he was not like human-like in that sense. He was definitely humanoid, but he was definitely not from this planet almost. And so I didn't really put too much thoughts about it, but when I woke up, this face was so basically present in my life that it basically followed me throughout my whole day. And so I went to work. I could see his face still in front of me while walking to my work. And so I found that very disturbing. And so at night, when my wife went to bed and our daughter went to bed, I decided to go into our living room. We have a 17-foot high ceiling into our house. And so it's a nice living room, mostly made of wood and with glass long panels. So it looks almost like a pyramid shape, living room somehow. And I was sitting on my sofa, and I was thinking, well, if I close my eyes, maybe something, would happen. But I had no real expectations. I even poured myself a cup of tea beforehand and left it cool down on the counter because I really didn't think that nothing would really arise from that experience. But so little did I know that when I closed my eyes, within a second, I could feel like a tornado, almost like feel all around me. It was kind of a wind feel going all around me 360 degrees. And then when I felt that the tornado stopped, I opened my eyes. And to my disbelief, I basically saw this teenage boy that I had his face in my dream. And what I saw during the day, he was actually standing right in front of me in the living room. So he was about, I would say, 9-10 feet away from me. And he was just standing there in a blue uniform, and with the same bright smile, looking at me with his very blue, vivid eyes. And he had a glow all around him, but very small glow, not like huge, very small, just enough for me to see him in his full colors. And there was no transparency about him, like he was there. I could see him in physical form. Well, at the same time, there was kind of almost like a frequency happening in front of him, something that was not right, like he was not physically there. It was almost like a very well done hologram in that sense. And so when I saw him, he really startled me, and I tried to get up, from the sofa, and my hands, I was on, my two hands were on the sofa, relaxing. I could not move. I was like frozen. And I looked at him, and knowing that I had no control over my body, I then said to him, what are you doing here? Who are you? But then I just realized that I could not speak. So no words came out of my mouth. And because I guess he could read my thoughts while saying that, he then replied to me saying, my name is Zor, and I am from the Galactic Alliance. And Zor is spelled Z-O-A-R. And for Americans who may be listening, it's Z-O-A-R. So I was just, startled by this encounter because I had no clue about, him or the Galactic Alliance or nothing at all. And so when he started talking to me, there was kind of an amnesia almost going on because I don't really recall the conversation very well, but somehow it feels very clear enough that I even wrote down the questions and answers on a piece of paper later on. And so when I saw him, what came out of this encounter was me asking him about those visions and say, do you think those visions are real? And he almost laughed about it, saying, well, people will die, but this is part of life. It's not a big deal. And that kind of reaction created even more stress in my life because, it felt scary almost, like he had no real, value in life. And so to me, that was kind of daunting and quite scary. So when, the conversation ended up, to me, seemed very, very quick, probably about 10-15 minutes. He faded out, like you could see his form, just fading away, like just disappearing. And when he vanished, I regained full control of my body. And it was very strange because I got up and almost instantly, I kind of walked almost like a zombie towards my living room, towards my kitchen, and I picked up my cup of tea that I left, 15 minutes earlier, so I thought. And so I was drinking it, and then I looked at the clock because it was freezing cold, and I just realized that I was having about 2 to 2.5 hours of missing time.
Okay. Now,
since
then, you say the being... and again, his name was Zool.
Zol.
Okay, yeah. It's not the Ghostbusters.
No.
Thing. Okay.
Z-O-A-R.
Zor. Oh, Zor?
Yes.
Zor. Okay. Have you done since then, any research or talked to anybody else where that being or that a being by that name has come through?
Well, as a matter of fact, for many years, I kind of sat on that information because I had my personal encounters with Zo and his star family for many years after that, and through hypnosis and off hypnosis. So what was interesting is last year I went to James Gillian Ranch in Washington State. And he has the ECT Ranch. I don't know if you heard of it, but
no.
James Gillian is a well-known figure, like a good channeler, and he has his own experiences with different beings. And he does all sorts of speaking events in America mainly. And when I went there, I sat down one night with him, and we talked about basically the stars, and we were doing like a sky watch that evening, and he didn't know anything about me whatsoever. And we sat down next to each other, and he basically he was talking to an older guy on his right hand side, and I was on his left hand side in a long chair. And so he basically started to this old guy, and I was kind of disconnected from this conversation. And then all of a sudden he started saying, "Oh, hold on a second, this etherical being comes to me," and he says Zor. He basically said the name of the being I had an encounter with in my living room. And so when I just heard that, I looked at him and I said, "Wow, where did that come from?" And he said, "Well, he's your star brother, and he's always around you. He's your guide in this life." So, and the guy didn't know anything about me or my experiences, and I basically never went on a radio show before. So it was kind of a very startling confirmation, to say the least, coming from this guy. And so when I basically had this encounter with Zo in my living room, I never mentioned it to the hypnotherapist when I went to see her. I basically wanted to tell her that I had visions, and that was it. So when I met with her, she said, "Well, can I ask you, what's happening? Because my dad always told me that hypnotherapy was like stage hypnosis. You basically they can make you do whatever they want, and it's just a goofy thing." And so I said, "No, she said it's more of accessing your subconscious mind and trying to recollect memories from your past." And so she kind of asked me, "You talk about visions. First thing she said was, do you want to control them or get rid of them?" And I said, "Well, I had some pretty good, interesting visions." And so basically the visions I had were pretty nice, but some of them were pretty negative and felt pretty stressful for me. And so she gave me the tools to control those visions, and I'm now able to control them on demand. But at the same time, she said, "Well, in order to understand what those visions are all about, let's go back to the time where you had the most amount of visions, or where they were the most vivid." And so I was talking about this experience when I was 16 years old, and when I had this encounter with, when I had this interest about Plato and the Atlantis, and during that year when I was 16 years old, because I then recalled that during that year I had automatic writing from a very ancient language, almost likely alien language. Like I kept writing for hours on end. I was in my art classes and I was drawing those symbols constantly. I was obsessed by it. And so that was one of the experiences I had, along with an out-of-body experience that basically I had an experience with girls saying, "Look, I can, let's do an experiment. You can place some objects on your night table, and tomorrow morning I will tell you what you place on your table." And so one of the girls that I'm still in touch with today, who basically could not talk about this experience for almost 20 years, said to me, well, yeah, what happened really happened. It was real. But it was so ground shaking for me because I was not a believer. I was taking it as a joke. When this happened, I realized that it was real because you described an object that I never brought to class. It was basically a very personal object that it came from my dad, and I never wanted to wear it. And so she knew it was a real visions of what she had on her night table that night. So that was one of the things that I had this year, and along with some visions of any kind, and also an interest in UFOs. In fact, I was talking to people in my school who knew people who had some UFO experiences, and I spoke to them on the phone too. So very strange things happening in that year. So the hypnotherapist brought me back to this time when I was 16 years old under hypnosis. So the first thing that happened was under hypnosis, I opened my eyes basically through my subconscious mind, I guess, and I could see my feet. I was outside the school, and it was at night, and I could look around and could describe my environment. And I said, I can see a cup above my head. I described it as much as this. It was a cup. It looked like a cup. And so then I looked at my feet, and I said, my feet are leaving the ground. And all of a sudden I could feel being, going vertically, straight up. And then all of a sudden I was placed on my back, and I went feet first into this spacecraft. The door was open. It was a rectangular shaped door, very bright. And as I went in, I could see those tall gray aliens that were about 7 to 8 feet tall, and they had very long arms going almost like reaching the floor, very elongated fingers, and very ugly faces to that extent. But they were just there and to experiment on me. I guess that was the object. So I was almost like laid down. I couldn't feel any slab. It almost like felt that I was levitating of some sort. But as I was laying down, and I could feel these aliens all around me, they were putting some IVs into my arm and a helmet on my head. And at one point they stopped, and they started to argue with a very guttural sound. And so when this happened, the hypnotherapist stopped the session because she was spooked by what was happening. She was not ready for it. She had no real experience in that field. So she said, I'm sorry, but I need to stop you there because I have no experience in that field. I need to read up about it and call you back later. And so that's what happened. I waited about a week or 2 weeks before she called me back. And when that happened, I decided to go back through the same experience, and I repeated it exactly, almost word for word, exactly the way I remembered it. So it was very accurate. And so when the aliens argued, the hypnotherapist then said to me, can you ask them what they're arguing about? And I interjected saying, how do you want me to ask them what they are arguing about when they speak an alien language? So that was so little did I know about the the hypnotherapy sessions. And so she said, well, by accessing your subconscious mind, you can ask them what they're arguing about. So that's exactly what I've asked them. And so they responded to me saying, we can't touch you because you've been tampered with. And so that was quite interesting because
you've been tampered with.
I've been tampered with, yeah. And so that meant nothing to me whatsoever. I repeated this. I repeated it to the hypnotherapist. And so she said, what does it mean to you, Sebastien? And I said, I have no idea. So then she said, can you ask them what that means? And I was met with silence. So we weren't going anywhere. And so then she said, can you ask them to show you what they mean by that? And so they basically then all of a sudden showed me holograms, like symbols right in front of me, between them and me. And they were like bluish symbols. And I wrote them down on a piece of paper for the hypnotherapist to see. And so one of them was an upside down triangle with 3 black dots on each point of the triangle. And so when I showed those symbols to the hypnotherapist, she said, what does those symbols mean to you, Sebastien? And I said, I have no idea again, no idea. And so what I've came to realize later on is that upside-down triangle was the winter triangle that we can see in our skies, which is where the Pleiades are. So Orion, all of these star systems are within a triangle. So, but I didn't know that at the time. So when I described those symbols, then she said, "Can they tell you what those symbols mean to you?" And I asked the question, and they decide not to answer. So then to that point, by the way, I just want to precise that as a businessman and as a very grounded person, I just basically believe, without having much experience with hypnotherapy, I thought that I was actually imagining it, and I had no credibility to this story whatsoever. I didn't think that this experience really happened to me when I was 16 years old. I was very critical of my experience, and I was telling it to the hypnotherapist, and she kept trying to show me articles about hypnosis and how it was described and validated in Canada. Even I think you probably could vouch for that, saying that for people who had major trauma, if they were run over by a car, they could use hypnotherapy, and a judge could decide to investigate, the number plate or something, if the person could remember some information arising from those sessions. So that was one of the points that she showed to me, along with. Go ahead.
I just have to stop you there because I have a lot of questions, not a lot of questions, but I have some questions on that in regards to the diagrams and the triangles and the star systems. And it is time for our 7-minute stretch. Okay. So everybody can top up their teas, grab another beer, powder their nose, and we're going to be back in 7 minutes with more from Sebastian Martin and his experiences with tall grays who found out he's already been tampered with.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott, and I would like to invite you to listen Monday through Friday right here on Spaced Out Radio. 3 hours a night of the top stories with the top guests, ranging topics from UFOs to ETs, ghosts to Sasquatch, and everything in between. We are live every night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. So come on in and take a listen at spacedoutradio.com. Spaced Out Radio will take you out of this world.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on 2 mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. 2 mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for. So join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings, no matter where you are. It's time for you to make time for you.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Tonight's edition of Spaced Out Weekend is brought to you by spacedoutradio.com, where you can now sign up to become a Space Traveler member. Now, for the final time tonight, here's Spaced Out Weekend's James Tyson.
Welcome back, everybody. We are with Sebastian Martin. He's an experiencer. Oh, is he an experiencer? Before he left, he was talking to us about his encounter with Greys and their wannabe experiments, but couldn't go anywhere because he's already been tampered with, and was talking about some of the holograms that he was provided with. And it's fascinating because you were talking also about the upside down triangle, and that's basically just before we left. That upside down triangle, is that the one that had a couple of dots on it or something too? I think.
Yeah, the triangle is it's basically is it an isocell? I don't know the term in English, but it's basically it has like all the same sides. They are all the same dimensions, and then you have like black spheres on each point. So like away from the triangle. Now, what's interesting about that triangle specifically is a few people that had this kind of drawing. One of them is Dr. Stephen Greer and James Gillian, the person that I've met in Washington State. So somehow that symbol, seems to be emerging in many places, and people experience them in a different way. But my interaction with that symbol was still unknown at the time. When I had the hypnotherapy session, I could not describe what this was about. It was not relating to me. It's just, one of those things that drew, and that was it. And so when the hypnotherapist said to me, can you ask those tall gradients where you've seen those symbols before, then I blacked out. And I felt that I was going backwards in time. And when I opened my eyes under hypnosis, I was basically immersed into a black liquid in a cylinder. And I could see a glass dome above me. And the cylinder itself had almost like it had details on the seams to connect the glass with the metal that I was in. And through the glass, I could see those tall beings. There was a man and a woman, and they both were wearing the same blue uniforms as Zor. But to the difference that they both had that upside down triangle on their chest. And the man had a trident on his forehead, while the woman just had almost like a basic band around her forehead. I couldn't really tell where it was, or it was made of some sort of metal. And they were both looking at me, but being very stern, almost like analytical. There was no real emotions arising from their presence. It was very analytical, and they looked like Nordic beings, not tall gradients. They were not related at all. They look like Pleiadians or Nordics, so very human-like beings, very tall, again around the 7 feet, mark, and they were just very physically fit and standing up there and looking at me through this experience, and that was quite traumatic to me because I wasn't expecting it at all, and that's when I came to realize that this experience was real. It was a memory rather than something I was fabricating, because there were so many details put in at the same time, all of a sudden, that there was no way I could have made that up if I wanted to. Especially that I came to see the hypnotherapist not knowing that I was being abducted in the first place. So all of that was unknown to me. And so when I lived that experience, I was in a body that was only 6 months old. So I was in a body of a baby, and I could see my hands again as a first person, and I was immersed into that black liquid that I knew was it was not like liquid like water. It was a bit thicker than that, but it was moving. It was slightly moving at the time, but not to the extent of frightening me at that point. So the hypnotherapist said to me, well, can you please come out of your body to see where you are? These are the exact terms she's used. So I did exactly that, and I came out of my body through hypnosis and with my subconscious mind, and I described the next scene saying, well, I can describe my environment. It's all black all around me, and I can see like a 2 to 3 miles long spacecraft that is cubic in shape, It has all sorts of mini cubes all around the spacecraft, like compartments, but very long, rectangular shape. And I said, I know exactly where I am inside the spacecraft. On the right-hand side there, I know exactly where I am. And underneath the spacecraft is the Earth. And so at that point, the hypnotherapist panicked and asked me to come back into my body, which I did. And when I did that, then she said, well, I'm sorry, Sebastien, I could almost like hear some kind of urgency in her voice, like she was like panicking because she wasn't used to it, I guess, and she knew that she goofed up. And so she said, can you please come out of your body but stay in a room this time to see where you are? So I did that, and I looked around, and the room was actually kind of almost like circular in shape. So not, there was no real corners, which was quite interesting. But there was a door on the right-hand side of where I was immersed in as a baby. And this door was quite big. It was physical, it was metallic, and it had symbols on them on each panel. And you could see it could slide on the side, almost on a 45-degree angle. And so I described the environment as being almost like biological. Like the walls felt like almost like felt. It was almost like living organism throughout. It was very strange. It's even hard to describe or to experience because it was a kind of a new experience. The floor, the walls, everything was living. And so I just came to realize that while I was in that room and I described what I could see, the hypnotherapist then asked me to come back into my body, which I did. And at that point, I could see the liquid, the black liquid I was immersed in. Some people sometimes refer it to as black goo, and I don't think it was the black goo of AI technology that was so, evil or negative to many people. That liquid was more biological. So it had a mind of its own, but it was not controlled by artificial intelligence. And for whatever reason, that liquid was supposed to be helping me. Now, you have to realize that at that point, because it was so unexpected, I didn't know exactly what this experience was all about. And the hypnotherapist stopped the session and said to me, well, there's a lot to take in that experience, and you will be receiving more downloads. Or after the session, you'll be going home, and you're going to be like feeling more experiences coming to you, or more, images or situations coming to you afterwards, which is exactly what happened. In fact, when I went back home, I just came to realize that when I was 6 months old, I basically had a skin condition. And when I was born, the first layer of my skin fell off. And that was really a strange timing, because my skin came back when I was 6 months old in patches from, in my arms and my legs and throughout my whole body. And so I asked my mother, my Earth mother, saying, look, this is what I've experienced. And you told me in the past that basically I had some skin condition, but can you tell me more about it? And for many, many years, she lied to me, thoroughly in front of my wife, so changing her stories all the time, because it was a disturbing time for her and for the rest of my family. So I guess they just want to leave it in the back of their mind and not really talk about it. And she basically said to me, then the real story was that when she got pregnant the first time, obviously, she had an hemorrhage. And when the hemorrhage appeared, the doctors initially told her that she was pregnant with one fetus, one heartbeat. And so when she went back to the hospital to find out, how the baby was, the doctors discovered that now she was pregnant with two fetuses, and not just that, but one fetus was to them 5 weeks older than the other. But that because of the trauma and the hemorrhage that she had, that only one fetus will survive. So I'm the one who survived, but they had to dehydrate the other fetus because it was still advanced, in the the conception process, and my mother was receiving monthly injections to basically not having that fetus degrade and hurt me, basically. So I'm guessing that when I was conceived after 9 months, I was born and my skin fell off, probably due to the chemicals that, my mother received. But then I also realized, from what my mother said at the time, that what she remembered was that they were telling her that I was lacking some proteins in my DNA. So there were some proteins, very specific proteins that were lacking, that were not present, that should have been there, that may have been creating that skin condition. So I said, okay, fine. But the timing of the experience I had under hypnosis and what my mother told me was exactly spot on. That when my skin came back and when I had that skin condition, for 6 months, any doctors in Europe could not find out exactly where it came from or, what it was about. And one Swiss doctor said, well, the skin has to come back. We don't know how to treat it. So it has to come back naturally. And that's exactly what happened. So nobody else made a fuss about it, and that was it. So that was kind of a shock to me, really, when I came to realize that the experience I had through or under hypnosis may have been related to that experience in particular. But I still didn't know why. I still don't know why I had this interaction with Pleiadians, why they were, trying to, help me, really. And so I had more interactions with Zo afterwards, more like telepathically or through visions. Like he came to me. I never saw him again physically. I basically spoke to him, and he told me that basically I was part of the star family and that it was important for them to help me. So when I went back to see the hypnotherapist, I said, look, this is the kind of experiences I had or went through, and I just want to know more. Like, there's something that is missing, there's something that is lacking. And Zo invited me to go back on a spaceship. And I just don't want to, to do it consciously almost, or, on my own. Maybe you can assist me in this. And so she helped me with that, and she said, okay. And so we decided to both go through the hypnotherapy session. And she basically brought me back to this time. Like, it was present, but I welcomed the experience of Zo. When he welcomed me, I went through like this elevator shaft. So I went up, very practical in a way. I basically imagined myself being in an elevator shaft, and I was going up. And when the door was open, Zo was right there, right in front of me, welcoming me. And then he led me to the same people that saw me when I was 6 months old, that man and that woman. And it was a very interesting experience, because then Zo started to speak to the man, and they had this kind of argument, almost saying, the man was saying, and I could hear him saying, what are you doing? Why do you bring him up here? That was the first question that the man said in a very stern way. And Zo replied saying, he's ready. He wants to hear you out. And so, and I had no idea what I was ready about, but, that's pretty much what he said. And so I welcomed it. And the man basically said to me, I'm your father, and this is your mother, and Zo is your younger brother. And he said, you were sent to Earth to experience this human life with human emotions, and so we could learn from it. And when you be dead in that life experience, you'll be coming back to us. And I then responded saying, well, what do you mean by I will come back to you? And then Zo showed me this body laying down on a slab, and I was just resting. And that was me as my star body. And he said, this is you. You are a Pleiadian, and you are here, and you committed to this experience. You went to Earth. You basically decided to split up your soul and to have a earthly experience as well as other experiences in the cosmos. So you are reincarnating in other places, not just the Earth, but elsewhere, to have those different experiences. And that was kind of shocking to me because I just came to realize that the Pleiadians had full control over the soul body and could split up souls and could basically understand how the light source or what created life was all about. Like, as light beings, they were in full control of that experience or that particular experience. And that to me was quite groundbreaking at the same time. But the fact is that the man then, as my dad, star dad, I would say, we'll call him that way, said that because of my awareness of what was happening around me and through this experience, that now my mission changed. And he actually used the word mission, which is actually a point I would like to use later on, because he said that I was supposed to be coming back to Earth and awaken the starseed of the planet. I mean, that's a huge, daunting task, if you ask me, especially if I have no real awareness on how to do it. And he never gave me tools to do it either. So the first thing that I thought about was, well, maybe I should just ask around. And I went on forums and I was basically just trying to share my story the best way as I could in writing through different forums, and people responded to it. And I had just wonderful experiences that way. But I felt that it was just not enough, and that the message had to be broadcasted through radio shows and videos. So I basically, for a long time, it took me about 5 years to know how to really express the experience, but also to know what to do. I mean, I was just too busy. My business ventures, I really had no need for this. I could have easily brushed it off and say, you know what, I don't care. I could have easily said that. There was no way I really wanted to immerse myself into something that I could not really understand, especially that my friends and families don't really know much about this. So I basically went to a conference, a UFO conference in the US 5 years ago, and that was pretty much the only UFO conference I went to in 5 years, and the latest one being in June of this year. So really just, I kind of let it go, not really knowing what to do. I was not really guided as to how to help the starseeds of this planet. But I kept receiving this urgency message from the Pleiadians and my star family saying, what are you doing? You should be doing something. But, I wasn't guided in any way. And I wasn't really even asking for help. I wasn't even asking for them to help me. So I was not trying to channel anything. I was very lazy, just trying to keep up with my work, and that was it. And fair play, I was actually feeling relieved that I didn't have the same visions as I used to have. So it felt better that way, in a way, right? So I was just living my days, and until a voice said to me 2 years ago, saying, you have to go to Mount Shasta. And I said, well, what's Mount Shasta? What's there? And I looked it up, and I just realized it was a big mountain. I said, okay. And I basically told my wife, and for whatever reason, I kept telling her, I need to go to Mount Shasta. I need to go to Mount Shasta. And she kept telling me, well, we've got 2 kids now, and it's not the right time. Maybe you should wait. So I said, okay. And then one day she said, you know what? Go to Mount Shasta. And she gave me about 3 days notice. So I just packed my bags, and I basically grabbed a book from the shelf, and I put it in my backpack. And I just came to realize that before I put it in my backpack, the book was sitting on my bed, and I really grabbed a book at random from my library. And most of my books were given away by a friend of mine who passed away a few years earlier, and he was working for NASA, and he was very interested in the UFO world and alternative energy. And I never read his books. He just, they just sat on my shelf. But he kind of donated them on his will when he died. And so I looked at that book, and it said the title was The Lemurian People of Mount Shasta. And it really startled me because I went back to the library and I looked around, and this was the only book about Mount Shasta that was in my library. Out of 1,000 books, there was only one, and that was the one that basically I grabbed from that library without even looking at it. Just trying to have a read from on the airplane.
Yeah.
And so I basically went to Mount Shasta, not knowing exactly what to look for there. And when I arrived there, I decided to booked like an Airbnb location, and I met a local woman who was like a shaman, I guess. A lot of people are shamans in this area, and I went to Mount Shasta. Went to the lodge that was a base camp, horse camp, I think it was called. And the woman guarding the lodge said to me, well, what are you doing here? And I said, I have no idea. I'm just here to explore the mountain and, experience whatever is here. And so she gave me a book about the history of the mountain and about the lodge. So I was there, I had nothing else to do. So I started to read the book. And the man, the author who was writing the book, was a local guy. And he was starting with his experience about the mountain, saying that he walked on the mountain and with his 8-year-old son and his dog, and all of a sudden on the south side of the mountain, he saw a temple, and he described it as a Lemurian temple. And he said that the energy was so strong that he could not go near it. Like the energy was too powerful for him to even touch the door or anything. But both his son and himself saw it, and the dog was barking, and so he basically placed put a spot on the tree where the temple was, and he left. And when he came back afterwards, the temple was gone. And that story kind of startled me a bit, and I said, "Oh, maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe I'm supposed to be going and see that temple, maybe, and seeing the spot for myself." So I was determined to come back to the place I was staying at, and somehow contacting that guy. So I looked him up online, see if he had like a social media page or something, some kind of contact, and he was nowhere. But the publisher was in New York, and I decided to call the publishing house of his book. And it was late in New York. It was about 8 p.m. over there. So I wasn't really hoping to get anybody answering the phone, but a woman answered the phone and said, "Well, I'm the publisher, and I was not supposed to be staying that late tonight, but so I was caught up in some work, and here I'm answering the phone." And so when I said to her that I was interested to connect with this author, she said, "Well, I can't give you his details, but if you email me, I will forward your email on to him, and then it will be up to him to call you," which I did. And within about 15 minutes of me sending that email, the author replied to me and said, "Sebastian, I live in San Francisco, but I will see you tomorrow." And we agreed on a meeting point at a local campsite at the base of Mount Shasta, and that's where we met the next day. And when we met, I basically started talking to him about my visions and about my background, and he kind of smiled. And so I didn't really know what he thought about it anyway. And, I was just like introducing myself to him and as to why I was here on this kind of spiritual journey. And then I said, I read that passage in your book about your experience with the Lemurian temple, and maybe this is something that I should be doing. I should be going there. And then he said to me, "Well, there was a flash flood happening a few weeks earlier, and the road to access it is damaged. But to be honest with you, what you are telling me, that experience that you are describing, really happened to me, but I never wrote it in my book." So what I was telling him was that I had a vision of him living that experience that he never wrote in his book in the first place. So that kind of gave him confirmation of, again, the same kind of visions I had. And he then said to me, the reason why I'm here today, Sebastian, is because when I was in San Francisco, my guide talked to me and said, you have to go to Mount Shasta and meet a foreigner without specifications. So he grabbed his bag, he listened to his inner voice or, guide, and he basically went late and he stayed in a motel outside San Francisco because he was stuck in traffic. And that's when he received my email. So that's pretty much how it went. And so when I spoke to him, I said, well, do you think I could get there somehow? And he said, no. My guide told me that you are not supposed to be going to the south side of the mountain and see that temple, which is a bit more recent. But your mission, basically, again, is supposed to be going on the north side of Mount Shasta and opening up a portal there, which is way more ancient. And he said to me something interesting. He said, I feel like I'm a kind of an advanced person, but my guide told me that you are the one who has to go there and opening up that portal, because he said even I couldn't do it in my lifetime. I said, okay, I'm game. What should I do? And he said, well, all you have to do is go up to the mountain and look for the big rock. I said, well, I don't know if you realize, but the whole mountain is made of rock. It's a volcano. I said, it's made of rocks everywhere. I said, which rock am I supposed to be looking at? And he said, well, you will see. I said, okay, that doesn't give much details. I said, well, at what elevation am I supposed to be going to? And then he said, well, around the 10,000 feet mark, around. I said, okay. So I started going up, and luckily enough, on the north side of the mountain, there was like a cell tower. So I had very good reception on top of the mountain. And I decided to go there the next day with my backpack and went up the whole day. And when I reached 10,400 feet, while feeling observed throughout, I then realized that there was a big rock in front of me. And I said, oh, that's the one. And so I walked towards the rock and I touched it, hoping to feel something. And then a deep voice spoke to me and said, not that rock, you dummy, the other rock. And I turned around, and there was this big boulder that was massive on the side of the mountain that was a bit higher up than where I was, but still on a 45-degree angle. And the path I walked on the side of it was a sheer drop. And so while there were like loose rocks, volcanic rocks on top of the mountain, to get to that large rock on the side of the mountain was a very treacherous way, and I could have died. And I looked at it and I said, I'm not going there. It's just, it's murder, And so I really hesitated a big time. Like I said, I'm not going there. I'm walking back. So after a while, I said, maybe I should go. And so I said, I didn't really come all this way and listen to all these voices for nothing. So I basically went through this loose rock, and my feet started to go under those rocks, like it was so loose. And I said, oh, I'm dead, I'm gone. And the rock stopped all of a sudden. And I looked behind me and said, maybe I should come back. But I was already halfway through. So then I walked across, and just before I could touch that large black rock, I could hear a sound, very deafening sound, something that was shutting down, like, and that was it. So I looked around and waited for something happening, and nothing happened. So I walked towards the rock, touched it again, thinking that something would come out of it. And then the same deep voice that spoke to me earlier said, okay, you are done, go home. That's it. And I was like, that's it. Oh, wow. Okay, that's pretty, deceiving. And so I waited still for a bit, but nothing was happening. So I I basically decided to walk around the rock and somehow join back slowly with the path I came from. And I went back up to the point where I saw the first original rock. And by the way, I was just at the base of the glacier point on Mount Shasta, so I was still pretty high up. But at that point, I waited and waited and waited, and there was nothing happening. And on the horizon, when I looked on the south side, there was on the north side, there were like 3 silhouettes. I could feel. At first, I thought they were like those Tibetan flags, flowing in the wind. And I just came to realize that there were beings that were wearing very long robes, and they were like purple, red, and yellow. Mm-hmm. And they were just on the horizon, spaced out evenly. So, which is why I thought they were flags to begin with. But then I just realized that they were, human beings almost on top of that mountain, on that peak. And so I looked around to see if I could see something else, because I felt observed throughout. Since I started the trip in the morning to the end, I always felt observed. I always felt that there were eyes on me throughout the whole process. So I looked around to see if I could see something else, and there was nothing else. So I looked back to see those 3 silhouettes, and they were gone. So, I was like, okay, well, what should I do next? And I had lunch or late lunch, and I decided to walk back, and that was it. And as I was walking back, the same voice said to me, "And never come back." And I said, yeah, exactly. I said, why? I'm a nice guy. Why are you so nasty to me? I did all this trip for nothing, and it's just like, tell me to not come back, So I basically walked back, and it was a big mystery for so long. I went back to Canada, and then when I came back to Duncan, I was reading about this article.
Oh, just a second.
Yeah.
For my listener on the other side of the planet, Duncan is a city on Vancouver Island. Mm-hmm. And for you newbies, Vancouver Island is the 2nd largest island in the Pacific Ocean. Don't make me point it out.
On the west coast of Canada.
Yeah.
And so I looked up an article and an ad about something that was called quantum touch healing. And I felt drawn to the ad, and I said, I never heard of this before. So I basically booked up an appointment with a therapist, and when I went there, she never talked to me. She said, okay, well, let's you lay down on a table, and I will be sitting down on a chair at the end of the room, and we just go from there. And so I said, okay. So she didn't even tell me what she was about to do. So I knew it was some kind of almost like a Reiki from a distance of some sort, some kind of energy work, but I didn't really know much about it. And as she was, relaxing, I could almost like hear her snore. And I said, oh God, that's a waste of $100, here, right there. I'm wasting my money here. And so I was like laying down, and I could feel something happening. Like while my eyes were closed, because I started to relax. At first, my eyes were open. I was looking around and thinking, what's going to happen? And but no, I just shut my eyes and decided to relax. And so I started to see my chakras in full details, one after the other, very clearly, very interesting. And then I could feel something happening in my stomach, and then I could feel some kind of cold, chill on my feet. And that was it. And then I kind of relaxed some more, and nothing was really happening, when all of a sudden I could then see like a whole event unfolding before my eyes, while my eyes were closed. So I could see myself as my star body, the same body that I've seen on the spacecraft with Zoe and my star family. And I could see myself as a first person. So once again, I could not see my face, but I could see my hands, and I had like some kind of uniform on. And I was walking through that path that was leading to this massive gate. Like it was a stone gate made of huge stone. They were like stones, basically like put on top of each other, forming a massive giant gate. And behind that gate were people waiting for me in various garments. And then I came to realize that those people were Lemurians. And I came over as a diplomat, telling them from the Pleiades that if they did not change their ways, they would be destroyed. So that was kind of a strong message.
Now, sorry, you were a diplomat telling Pleiadians if they didn't smarten up?
No, telling Lemurians.
Lemurians?
Yes. That if they didn't smarten up, they would get destroyed. Their world would get destroyed. And I was here to help them through that crisis because as a diplomat, I was there to sort things out. And I stayed with them for a while. And while being with them, I interacted with their priestess. You talked about a priestess earlier, funny enough, and there was a priestess there. And that priestess was pretty negative. She had an aura about her that was extremely evil, almost, pretty negative. But while I was staying with them, I've changed her perspective and almost like her energy changed into good energy. And while I was still there, she got killed. So I didn't know exactly what was going on, but her people killed her. And that was pretty much the end of it. And I came back to my spaceship and Lemuria got destroyed. So it was pretty simple. But it was kind of a weird experience I had, while doing the quantum touch healing session.
Now, would you say this experience, like you've had visions before that are things that have happened in the past?
Yes.
Would you say this happened in the past?
Well, basically past, present, and future are exactly on the same timeline. We're just, time and space is just, a concept that we have on Earth, but which is very different from what's in the cosmos.
Well, here's the weird thing. The Galactic Federation, not the one you see on TV, it is said to have allowed the Pleiadians to enter into, what's it called? An incarnational cycle with humans on Earth. Mm-hmm. The places designated for them to do this was Bali, Hawaii, Samoa, India. Civilizations came and go on Earth, and wars, peaceful cycles, disasters, whatever else. But between about 196,000 BC and last Wednesday, and 10 AD, the Pleiadians were staying with us humans until about 10 AD, and they're trying to help us develop various situations like Lemuria, Maya, Inca, and civilization at Machu Picchu. They were also trying to guide humans toward a more spiritual path. And
that's right.
The last Palladian leader left here about 10 AD. His name was Pelagius, I think. And he left for good. He was the last guy. The Palladians finally achieved peace back home because that's why they were here, because they was going for a poop where they had lived. And it was, at that time, it was time for us to evolve on our own. But and they did leave a spiritual leader, Jemanuel. Does that ring a bell? Who we later known him as Jesus. A very, very evolved soul. Father was Gabriel of the Pleiades. Mary, who was Lyrian. And then we evolved without direct contact. So when you talk about as being an ambassador, that the where was I going with that rant? I've totally lost it. No, with the when they wiped out Lemurians, that was an Earth culture.
Yes.
So it wasn't like they were, and that would have happened back a long, long time ago.
Yes, and it was a huge continent, and that experience was pretty traumatic to the Pleiadians. But at that point, the Lemurians already had full power in terms of use of nuclear energy, pretty much the way we are now, but in a much bigger way. So using it to almost like enter into the cosmos and that's the main reason why the Pleiadians stopped them in their tracks, because they were becoming too destructive to themselves and to the cosmos.
Okay.
And so the Pleiadians' message is about consciousness, as you said. It's about love, and it's a very simple message. But at the same time, they've learned from their own mistakes, and because they were kind of, and I say were because they changed their path. But at the beginning, they were kind of a military type nation, and their world got destroyed. And so, in order to find a way to recreate their world, they were anticipating some experiences in the cosmos to somehow evolve our consciousness, so we could potentially increase our vibration and recreate a new reality. And the thing is, what people don't really understand, or yet anyway, is that every single race in the cosmos have to evolve at the same rate. It's not, one way. It's not about us to raise our consciousness or vibration. It's everyone involved in the cosmos, because everybody has to gain in that process, and everybody is aware of the light source. Everybody is trying to attain more knowledge and more peace throughout the process. There is no real good and evil in the process. There is a balance happening, but it's also about seeing how we can interact with one another on Earth that allows them to learn from that experience. And, you might think this is just like an egoistic way of doing things as human beings, or even to talk about this, because we could just be like an ant and be representing nothing in the cosmos. But unfortunately, that argument could easily be destroyed from the experiences I had, but also what other people experienced, in terms of the fact that we are hybrids. We are all hybrids on this planet. And we are all manipulated one way or the other by a specific race of alien. And therefore, this is why people feel they have like a guide, or they channel their guides, or other spirits, because they are being washed by their own people. And I don't know which ones are your guides, or what other beings on Earth are their guides are. But when I meet those people, I know that we are somehow related, that we have something in common, like a thread in common. And when we start talking, we feel like we've known each other for a long time. So it's a very interesting idea to share those stories, because when people open up, you just realize that you can make friends easily in a way. But when I had those experiences with the Pleiadians, they still kind of led me to believe that I was supposed to be going on a mission and to work in the starseeds of the planet, but I still didn't know why and how. And so it was still this cryptic message, like I was, gearing up towards an awakening of some sort, but no tools to do it. And I was still listening to those voices. And so when I basically had that vision from the past about the Lemurians, it just made me realize that the person I was with in the room was that priestess. That was that woman who basically was evil to begin with and changed her ways and got killed. And so when the session finished, she then said to me, okay, so this is what I've done with you. I basically started to go through your chakras to see if you had any knots, and I released some of those knots through your feet, which is why you probably felt some cold. So she was spot on with what I physically felt. And she never explained to me beforehand. So that was interesting. And then after that, I told her about my experience. And when I finished, she was extremely uncomfortable about it and started to cry. And I said, well, I'm sorry, did I say something that, was disturbing or, that shocked you? And she said, well, what you told me was that I was a priestess, and I knew that I was a priestess. And the reason why I'm doing this today, this kind of light work to help others, is because I know of my past, of my karma. And when I went to Hawaii, I basically experienced this exactly. And so she knew about, her experience. But she said, I know I'm supposed to be going to Mount Shasta, but I never came about to go. And so and I don't really know what to get there. And so that kind of experience was very interesting to me, but it was one of the experiences I could have had with other people on Earth. It's just one encounter out of many. And, sometimes we're almost like placed in places, and we go to places where, we have those interactions with people that we've seen in previous past lives as well. This is always almost like history repeating itself. And so that was very interesting because I talked to her about my experience, but again, related to the Pleiadians, the same people that I interacted with. But it still didn't really give me any kind of insight as to what to do next. And I think we're kind of running out of time now, but I had an experience with archangels back in September, which was basically extremely profound. And that experience completely removed all of the amnesia that I was suffering from my past and from my past lives, and also gave me a storyline really about the Earth and what we're here for. What's our story, basically? They fully gave me an explanation about space, time, timelines, what we are on Earth for, and gave me a full explanation about everything. And at first, it was kind of a message that I received, and I had a lot of downloads that I could not explain or understand at the time, but I could feel this huge download happening at the same time through this experience. But again, I guess that's more for a story for another time.
Yeah, it's a good one though.
It is. It is.
It's fascinating to me because of I have a number of guests that come on from all ends of the realm, the psychic realm.
Yes.
It's from the second coming of Christ to people who perceive they were empresses and emperors in past lives. I know a lot of people. We have a young woman who says she is a priestess. That's very common.
Right.
A lot of these races, these star brothers and sisters, they consider themselves royalty or more of the higher. Nobody's a worker bee. It's everybody's. Right. Everybody's Cleopatra. It's it's interesting when you start looking down into what other people have connected to Lemurian or Palladian or any of the we'll call them Star Brethren. A lot of these, almost like the First Nations here, where it was a matriarchal society. All the women were held at a higher standard. So, and I think in the Palladians, the Palladian way of thinking, it is more of a matriarchal where every female would be a priestess. Every male is a priest. It is a common, they all have the one common knowledge. If everybody's got the common knowledge, then nobody's smarter than the next person. See what I'm saying?
Right.
So it is a very nice way of living. There's nobody who's better than the next person. Ego isn't a big deal.
No. And like I said, while I was a Pleiadian going and meet the Lemurians, it felt very humble. I was humbled because I basically walked down to meet with them. And no special attire. I just came in as a messenger, basically, more like it. And but it was still a very strong message, regardless. And I was still there to interact with them for weeks on end. So I was basically interacting with them. So I was still welcomed, and I was greeted by them. And I was going through these traumas that was happening within their culture, which at the end I had to leave because I was being threatened by myself if I stayed. So it was not like all rosy and perfect. There were some problems, and I never saw myself as an emperor. And I did have some past life regressions of very humble experiences where I even saw myself in the body of a 6-year-old girl, English girl, who died drowning at the beginning of the 19th century. So, and again, it felt like nothing. It felt like a common experience. It was part of life experiences that I had to go through. But like I said, I was not a priestess, so I was not a king or an emperor or anything. It was a very common experience. Yeah. But it's all a learning experience. And at the end of the day, like I said, what I've learned afterwards is nobody is special. The missions that the Pleiadians are trying to tell us as human beings is a lie, because they want you to stay in one direction to follow their order. So you feel special, you do their bidding without trying to even look at anything else. And that's what the problem was really for me, is when I interacted with the archangels, they kind of broadened my spectrum, and they removed all the shackles pretty much, and trying to free me from that amnesia. So when I understood that, I wasn't angry, but at the same time, it made me understood what was the agenda and what we're supposed to be doing as the human race, basically.
Yeah, which is going to continue now. Mm-hmm. We're going to go a little bit into overtime here, but could you tell us what describe what your platform is you've built?
Sure. Please. Yeah, so I, based on my experiences back in August, I came to realization that I could create a web platform to welcome contributors in the fields of alternative medicine, alternative media. Alternative media meaning alternative lifestyles and alternative energy, and as well as UFO disclosure and consciousness work. So all of these domains can be placed and networked onto one platform. And when you see that one person specializing in one domain has, for example, 20,000 followers, if you multiply that by 60, you automatically have 1.2 million viewers that will be spreading the message of consciousness, which is the term Ensuo means consciousness. So for people who basically want to know more about the platform right now, it's still under development. They can go on consciousnessplus.com. Instead, I don't have to spell ensuo.com, so it's easier that way, and it's easier to remember. And they can also go to the Facebook page, which is on your website, which is the official Ensuo page, where they can see some videos and articles about consciousness and what I believe in, which is more about what we should be doing and as an exercise, which is practicing mind over matter, which is pretty much what is the first steps of reaching consciousness, is try to understand what we are all made of and going back to the light source, and in order to reshape our consciousness, which is the tagline of the platform, so we can raise our vibration and create a new reality for our future, which will be a much better reality for everyone, that will be freed of pollution and disasters and basically pollution and all of that, all the stuff that we are suffering from today, the monetary system, everything will be gone, because we can recreate this reality once we understand that we can do something for the better using the collective consciousness.
Well, that's good then. And we're going to have you back. Let's see. Well, I'm going to try to drag you back next weekend. What the heck? Okay. We are going to be shut down over Christmas just because of the giant blizzards coming in, Christmas and New Year's. Mm-hmm. But other than that, we will be kicking butt, and Dave will be on Monday to Friday with all his guests, and you can find them by going to our website, spacedoutradio.com. And I swear I promise that I will post my guests a little bit earlier. And I want to thank everybody in the chat rooms. I'm typing right now. That's why I'm sounding funny. And I want to thank Sebastian And I don't even have time to ask you that great question, like what happens to you when you die. But we'll get back to you, and I'll tell everybody out there when you're going to be back. And to my listeners out there, please try to get along, for goodness sakes. Don't make me pull this car over, young lady. And priestesses, they're no better than anyone else, and you know that. Keep an open mind.
This is our last goodbye. Young hearts will stop. Torn souls set free. All that we have is now. If this is what you want, then come to me.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing and they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountain. Because somebody hide, somebody better hide on through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. And forget yourself. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. On through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after. No!
I see dead people.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Dave's not here!
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.